The very last day of Moshe Rabbeinu's life, he gathers the Klal Yisrael together and he tells them words of tochacha, words of warnings. He explains to them the tremendous rewards that are waiting for those who keep the Torah, tremendous punishments. He also explains that the Klal Yisrael do not do as they're supposed to. If they don't act as the Am HaNivchar, they won't last very long in the land of Eretz Yisrael. They will quickly be expelled. And he even alludes to much of the gullus, much of what's to transpire. And he explains that there's a concept of tshuvah. And at the very end, after the final summation, Moshe Rabbeinu gives an eitzah. Vaydosi lachem hayom es hashamayim v'sa'aretz. Rashi explains that Moshe is giving advice. Let me give you a tool. Let me give you a technique to keep this in front of you. If you're ever tempted to go the wrong way, if you're ever tempted to disobey the rules that Hashem laid down, look at Shamayim va'aretz. Not once did the sun say, I'm not going to rise today. Not once did the earth say, I'm not going to produce. Or not once did you plant barley and it decided to grow wheat. The sun obeys Hashem's commandments. The earth obeys Hashem's commandments. They don't receive reward if they listen. They don't receive punishment if they disobey. Yet they listen exactly, every time, exactly as they're told to do. You, the Klal Yisrael, how much more so? If you do what you're supposed to, you'll gain reward. If not, you'll be punished. Look at the sun, look at the earth. Use them as your tools to keep this in front of you, keep you on the straight and narrow. And that's how Rashi explains the pasuk. And the problem with that, Rashi, is rather obvious. And that is, when Hashem put the sun into its place and placed the earth in orbit around it, that's where it will remain. And that's the course it will follow, because that's the way Hashem created it. Of course the sun rises every day. The sun doesn't have a choice. It's an inanimate object. Of course the earth produces wheat or barley or whatever you plant into it, but not because it so chose, but because that's the way Hashem created the world. Earth produces produce. The sun rises. What possible lesson can the Klal Yisrael learn from that? We are Bali Bechira, we have choices, we have temptation, we have various things pulling at us at a constant clip. What possible lesson could we learn from Shemayim V'aretz? And I'd like to see if we could better understand what this Rashi is sharing with us, better understand what Chazal is telling us here. And to do that, I'd like to focus on an interesting point. In our modern world, we are very accustomed to harnessing forces that we can't see. We're very comfortable in powering up our cell phone and expecting that my friend down the block, or in the next city, or in the next country will hear me and will converse. We don't think about the fact that this little gadget is sending out radio waves to a tower, which is relaying it to another tower, which is going to relay it to a satellite some 3 miles up in the sky. I speak to someone 6,000 miles away effortlessly without even thinking about the astonishing forces that are in place. But we're accustomed to them and we know they exist. When you plug your vacuum cleaner into the wall, you've never seen electricity, but you fully expect it to be powered. Running through the wires of my house is a force, is an energy. My eye doesn't see it, but it sure is real. And when you go to the doctor and you place your arm under that x-ray machine, you understand that you don't see the x-rays, but they penetrate the flesh. They're blocked by the density of the bone, and the silhouette is shown in the film beneath it. Radio waves, x-rays, electricity, forces that we don't see, but that are real, and we are much aware of. Whilst you've never seen electricity, I doubt that you'd accept my offer if I said to you, I'll give you $10 if you put a key in a socket. I don't think you'd take me up on it. Why? Because you know this will end very badly. Because forces are there, they can harness the force of an atom and power a city. We send out radio waves. We're very comfortable with forces that we don't see. I always wonder what would happen if you took someone from a different era, took someone from a time when these forces weren't unknown, and you brought them into our modern world. What would their reaction be? So imagine with me for a moment, we take Shmuel. a regular yeshiva guy living about 200 years ago, and we bring him into a yeshiva dorm in the middle of, let's say between starim, sometime during lunch. Shmuel walks into the dorm room, and all of a sudden, what's it does? The noise. Shila Shmuel, it's Rosh Limbo. Rosh Limbo on the radio. Wie is the Mensch? Wie is the kleine Mensch? There's no man. It's a radio. There's a call. Chill. Shmuel. There's a man standing by a microphone. He talks into the microphone. His voice is translated into electrical impulses. The electrical impulses are sent to an antenna. It sends out the radio waves. The radio waves are medium-sized waves. They travel, and they come into this little box, and it talks. He's the man. He's 20, 30 miles away. What's the problem? On the radio waves. What is Shmuel? They're radio waves. They go. But how do you get through the walls? The wall. They go through the wall, Shmuel, right through the walls, up and down, through this wall and that wall. What's the problem? Wie ist der Koich? Wie ist der Koich for the Zah? Power. Relax, Shmuel, listen. Electricity. It goes through the walls, from the basement up and around. Electricity. You could see this? No. You can touch it? Well, you could, but that wouldn't be such a good idea. But wait, Shmuel, I want to see something. Come here. Listen, come here. I want you to look at this. See this egg? Raw egg? Watch this. I'm going to open this little cabinet. I'm going to put it in my bowl. I'm going to push a lever 1.5 minutes and just wait. Ding! I open the microwave oven and I pull out for Shmuel a cooked egg. Kishuf! How'd you do it? You can't do it. It's going to sein. Shmuel, take it easy. There's a transducer. A transducer emits microwaves, very tiny waves. Those waves excite the electrons. It causes the electrons to speed up more quickly. And that speeding up causes friction. It cooks the egg. What are you getting bent? What's an electron? Can you could see it? No. Can it sein the micro? No. Now, I dare share with you that I don't think Shmuel would believe what I'm saying. Waves going through walls, electrons that you can't see. But these are realities that we're fully aware of. The Rambam tells us that every kochav, every celestial being has a spiritual counterpart that governs it and keeps it doing what it should do. When we stare at the ball of the sun, there's a powerful kochav, a powerful mazel, called different things, but it's a spiritual force that governs and tells the sun exactly what to do. Every single one of the celestial beings has a part of it, a spiritual counterpart that controls it, that governs it. The Ramchal tells us that it really goes much further. Every physical entity has a spiritual counterpart. As Chazal tell us, no blade of grass can grow without a mazel telling it, without a spiritual force telling it to grow. And the Ramchal explains to us that there are laws of nature. As there are physical laws of nature, heat tends to rise, gases tend to expand. There are physical laws that govern the upper world. There are laws of nature that govern these upper forces. Hashem created them, put them into place, and each does what it's supposed to do. Now, if you and I were witnessing a magician, and the magician would say to you, I'm going to make this cup disappear. Abracadabra, poof, and the cup disappears. You and I are fully aware that that sleight of hand, it's smoke and mirrors, it's not real. There's something in the Torah called kishuf. Kishuf is not sleight of hand. It's not an optical illusion. Kishuf means literally making an object appear or disappear. It wasn't there, you said the words, you did whatever it was, and you made it happen. The Sefer Chinuch explains how it works. He says Hashem gave the wisdom to certain people at certain times to be able to control the upper world forces. Remember, no physical entity can exist without a spiritual counterpart governing it. There is a wisdom to knowing how to manipulate the upper worlds. There's a derech hateva, there's a way of nature of the upper worlds. And if you know how to do it, you can make cups appear, you can make, various things happen. And if you'd like to see an interesting manifestation of that, the Midrash tells us that when Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron came into Paro, Hashem gave them mofsim, wonders, astonishing shinui hatevas to prove to Paro that they were the representatives of God. Aaron took the staff, this powerful, strong staff, he threw it on the ground, and it turned into a live, slithering serpent. If you or I would have seen that, we would have fallen on our face and said the words, Hashem hu Elokim. What a mo-face, a solid, inanimate object turning live into a different being. That was not Paro's reaction. The Medrash tells us that Paro called for the 5 and 6 year olds, the first year academy kids. Boys, come here. Throw your sticks down. One by one, each one threw down a stick, and it turned into a snake. You see, Mitzrayim were very learned in Kishuf. They were Bali Machshefa. They were so learned in this that was actually going on was a war of ideology. What Moshe Rabbeinu was saying was, there's Elokim, Hashem, who is the creator of all, the maintainer of all. Every one of those spiritual forces was created by Hashem, maintained by Hashem. Hashem is the Melech Malchei Amlochim, to which Paro said, baloney. If you think your God's better than my God, I'll prove it to you. My God's the Tleh. And those months long of battle was a battle of ideology, which God is superior. The Klal Yisrael grew up in Mitzrayim. The Klal Yisrael were very, very exposed to Kishuf. We modern people are very, very sophisticated in the physical sciences. We're very aware of chemistry, biology, physics. We're clueless to the science of the spiritual world. The ancient man was very, very schooled in sciences of spirituality. He knew little about technology, little about the physical world sciences, but he was very well schooled in the science of the spiritual world, and the Mitzrayim were very adept at it. The Bnei Yisrael grew up amongst that, and they were very, very attuned to these spiritual forces. One more step. During Rosh Hashanah davening, we spend a lot of time discussing what happens in Shemayim. Parts of the Tefillah describe groups and groups, powerful, powerful groups of malachim. Groups of malachim that contain tens of thousands of malachim, group after group after group. And if you can imagine the Pamalya Shemalya, billions and billions of malachim singing Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Here's the question. Let's say I take an iPod and I record the words Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzivakos, Meloch Haaretz Kavodo. I hook that iPod up to speakers, and more speakers, and more speakers, thousands upon thousands of speakers. I push play. Wow, what a Kiddush Hashem, right? No, because it's one iPod, bunch of speakers. So here's the question. What's the great glory to Hashem Shechina? You have thousands of malachim, tens of thousands, millions, billions. They're robots, they're automatons. They're just pre-programmed. They're like an iPod that you turn on, right? Wrong. The Rambam says that every one of these Sorim and Malachim are Ba'alei Deya. They're Das Nifra. They're a separate intelligence. They have a will of their own. They have understanding of their own. And when they say Kadosh, it's because they recognize the glory of Hashem Shechina. And it is a glorious moment when the Pamalya Shemalya, when the upper world recognizes the glory of Hashem. And I believe that's Pshat in this Rashi. You see, the Klal Yisrael were very, very attuned to spirituality. They looked at a rock and saw the spiritual component of it. What Moshe Rabbeinu was saying was, look at the sun. Every single day it rises. It has a choice. It doesn't have to do that. Pay attention to the words in Shabbos davening. Semechim b'seisam v'sasim b'voam. They're joyous. Who's joyous? The sun and the moon are joyous. Rocks aren't happy. That's true. Rocks aren't, but the Sar, the Malach, the spiritual component is, they obey dutifully. There's no reward, there's no punishment. Yet they listen precisely and exactly to what Hashem says. Why? Because they recognize that which Hashem says is for the good of them and the good of the entire cosmos. They recognize that Hashem is the Meitiv. Everything that Hashem commands us in is for our benefit. The reason why the sun listens is because it recognizes the good and it obeys. Not because it has to, not because it's bound to, but because it recognizes the truth and it follows suit. So too with the earth, so too with all of the physical beings. You, Klal Yisrael, you have much more. If you listen, you're rewarded. If you don't, you're punished. If they recognize the truth, use them as your hero. Use them as your mark on the wall that you stare at and say, if the sun makes its decision and abides by Hashem's rules, so too should I. And the reason this worked for the Klal Yisrael is because they were so attuned to the spiritual world, it was real. Much like electricity to us, much like radio waves that we don't see, but we're fully aware that they're existing. When Hashem brought the Klal Yisrael to Har Sinai, He opened up the heavens. He opened up the heavens, and what the Klal Yisrael saw was all of these forces are created by, maintained by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They saw from one end of the earth to the other, they understood, and their perception was brilliant. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu said to them, you see, you understand, use this as your vehicle, as your tool, to keep loyal, to listen to the words of Hashem. Now, you may say, this is interesting, high up there, but what's it got to do with us? So I'd like to share with you, I think this has an awful lot to do with us, and I'll explain to you what I mean. Chazal tell us that when Hashem created Adam Rishon, Hashem put man in the perfect world. Gorgeous, complex, beauty throughout. Hashem showed Adam Rishon the beauty of Gan Eden. And He said, Re'eh, look at Ilani, look at my trees, look at what I put into this world. Pay attention that you don't destroy my world. Adam Rishon sinned, and he destroyed the world. The Derech Hashem explains that death wasn't a punishment. It wasn't like Hashem got angry at Adam and had to punish him. Rather, Adam destroyed the world. The world was so damaged that Hashem could no longer continue it as it had initially been created. Adam so changed things, so twisted them, that the world had to change radically. And if it could be, Hashem had to introduce this new thing called death. Okay, here's the question. What in the world can one man do to destroy a world? Even if you tell me, the Shlosham explains to us that it's an Ilui Gadol, it's a great elevation for the whole world when the Adam HaTzadik uses it, I don't understand what that means. Did the trees become less tree-like? Did the mountains become less mountain-like? What did Adam Rishon do to destroy the world that Hashem Kaviyachal said that the world has to totally be destroyed and start over? No, all right, I'll introduce death, which is like a sort of semi-in-between. What in the world did Adam do? And more than that, what could any one human being do to destroy a whole world? It's so beyond our frame of reference that we can't relate to it, we can't understand it. So what's Pshat? So to share with you what Pshat is, I think we have to do a little bit of an exercise in self-awareness. You know, your psychologists will tell you be self-aware, be aware of your emotions, your emotional state. Let's do a little spiritual self-awareness. Okay, here we go. What is the difference between you and a malach? Right? Between you and an angel. What's the difference between you and an angel? Ask the average person, it's a no-brainer. Come on. An angel is ruchni, he's spiritual. I'm gufni, I'm physical, right? A malach is totally spiritual. I'm the opposite, I'm physical. There's no basis of comparison. Unfortunately, that's dead wrong. A malach is ruchni. A malach is spiritual, and so too are you. Now don't make a mistake over here. Your body is physical. But don't mistake the clothing for the man. You're not your arm, you're not your head, you're not your chest. You're the guy inside. You're the guy who thinks, you're the guy who feels, you're the guy who tells the arms and legs to move. Much like an astronaut who wears a spacesuit, but the spacesuit isn't him. There's a guy inside. You are the guy inside. And you are not physical. We get so used to mistaking the body for me that we forget this. Would you like an illustration of this point? Medical ethics today, one of the great issues of debate is how do you define death? What's death? When respiration stops, is it when there's no EEG, maybe brain stem death? How do you define death? I want to ask you a question. Death is so easy to define. I don't say when anyone has a problem. Look, I am the neshama, right? When I'm in the body, I'm alive. When I leave, I'm dead. What's so difficult to define? Just do a test. See if the eye is there, he's alive. If the eye is gone, he's dead. What's so difficult? Would you like to know what's so difficult? I have no physical manifestation. I don't exist in the physical world. And if you'd like to know what I mean, imagine the following. Imagine I walk into a hardware store and say, I'd like to purchase a pound of light, please. Huh? A pound of light. Huh? Come on, I need a pound of light. What are you saying? My dining room is dark. It's a pretty big room. I need about a pound. Can I buy a pound of... You don't measure light by the pound. Maybe you can measure luminosity, maybe candle power as a frame of reference, but you can't weigh light. Do you know why science has such difficulty defining death? Because you can't measure eye. You can't take eye, put it in a beaker, add some dye and see what color it turns. You can measure gas levels in the blood. You can measure respiration rate. But I have no physical manifestation. I'm utterly, totally, completely ruchni. You can't measure eye with a ruler. You can't weigh it on a scale. From a physical perspective, I don't exist. But gee golly, I've existed my whole life. I mean, I know I'm alive because I'm pretty, I know I am. But you hear what I'm saying? The physical body exists in a physical world. I am ruchni. I, the one inside, I, the one who thinks, I, the one who remember, am utterly, totally ruchni. I am spiritual. When the body is put in the grave, I leave. Not some splintered down version of me, not some fraction of me. I, the one who thinks with all of my memories, with all of my aspirations, leave the body in the ground, but I am a ruchni spiritual entity. So if we have a malach that is spiritual, and we have I that is spiritual, let's revisit the question. What is the difference between you and a malach? Between you and an angel? And so the Ramchal in Sefer Ikrim explains to us that there are two distinctions. He says, malachim have no hergeshim, feelings, emotions, that which we consider the higher part of the human. One of the key distinctions between the animal world and man. Right? Man has compassion. Man has empathy. Man experiences love. That's what elevates him above the animal kingdom. Explains the Ramchal, you got it backwards. That is not the height of man, quite the opposite. That's one of the things that drags him down. And I'll explain to you what I mean. If it could be, when Hashem created the world, one of the most difficult things for Hashem, again, if it could be, was to give Adam Bechira, free will. And I'll explain to you why. There's a part of me, the I, that thinks that I'm brilliant, incisive, and understand exactly the consequences. I was taken from under the Kisei HaKavod. Hashem took me from under His throne of glory and put me into this world. And here's the problem. How could I ever sin? How could I ever do something that damages me? Every mitzvah that Hashem gave us is for our benefit. Every avera damages us. No human being should ever sin. As an example, let's say I offered you, let's say $100 to drink a cup of bleach. Come on, all right, we'll make it better. $1,000 for a jug of chloride. Come on, just come on, chug it down and we'll be friends, okay? You're not going to take it. Why? Because drinking bleach is the height of folly. It's ridiculous. How do you tempt man to sin? Every sin damages him. Every sin destroys a part of his greatness. How could you put man into a world and tempt him? It's impossible. He would never do it. To answer that and to create this entity called free will, Hashem mixed my seichel into a nefesh bahami with various needs, desires, appetites. And when I open my eyes, there are all kinds of things pulling at me. There's a pure seichel mixed in with a nefesh bahami, with an animal soul. And now I have so many different desires, appetites, inclinations. I want this and I want that. I want that and I want this. 1 minute I'm literally speaking to Hashem, dominating right in front of the Melech Malchim Lochim. And the next minute I am leap years away. If you'd like to understand the human, let me share with you a mashal. It used to be popular, but is no longer. Guys in yeshiva used to get drunk on Purim. Okay. Now, I want you to imagine with me for a minute the following. Imagine a young yeshiva guy, first year base medrash. We'll give him a name, we'll call him Moshe. And this is the first year that he's gotten drunk. And there you see him. He's quite tipsy, and he's in the street. Moshe, what are you doing? I'm playing with the pretty cars. Moshe, you're going to get hit by one of those cars. I know. Hit, smack, crack, break my back. Moshe, you're going to get hit by a car, and they'll take you to the hospital. I know. They'll take me to the hospital. The doctor will put pins in my bone. I go through a metal detector. Ding, ding. What's going on? Moshe understands the consequences. He tells you that he's going to get hit by a car. He says the words, they're going to take me to the hospital. He understands he's going to need pins put into his bones to fix him back up. What's his problem? His problem is he's drunk. He gets it and he doesn't get it. Do you ever wonder how we could stand there in Shul and Rosh Hashanah and say to ourselves, Hashem is the Melech Malchei Amlochim. Hashem is going to determine my fate, whether I live or die, whether I make a living this year or not, my children, my family. Oh, my wife makes good hopes. And again, and Hashem's going to determine how much money I'm making. And what are you doing? How could you mouth the words that you're being judged and you're thinking about so many other things? Do you believe it or do you not believe it? Do you understand the consequences or do you not? Are you drunk? And the answer is yes, exactly. Hashem did a very, very good job at creating Adam in a sense of equilibrium. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't, with drives and passions and all mixed up and ever drunk. But as you know, there are different types of highs. You could drink beer, you could drink wine, you could drink whiskey, and each one gives you a different sense of inebriation. Chazal tell us in Purim, if you drink, you should drink wine, because yain is yismach levav enosh. It has a different sort of high. If you'd like to understand yourself, watch this. You ever notice when you get angry? It's not just that I feel differently, I look at things differently. That guy who used to be a choshev individual is a creep and a louse. That losa say that I used to know is very, very chomer, not to embarrass a Jew in public, all of a sudden is not a big deal. And I'll say things and do things in my anger, not just because I feel differently. I look at things differently. I think differently. You ever feel envy? When I'm envious, I look at the person with a different set of eyes. I look at them with a different value system. It's not just feelings. It's my thought processes. My thinking changes. If you'd like to understand the human, imagine that there's a filter in front of you. Most of the time just blurry and hazy, but sometimes it turns red. When I'm angry, I see the world through a red filter. Everything I see, it's not just my feelings. I interpret, I think with anger. When I feel jealousy, when I feel hatred, when I feel any midah, it's not just the feelings, it's totally in me. I think through it because there are different states of drunkenness. We're always in a state of sometimes getting it, sometimes not, but then there are different filters and different state of drunkenness. If you'd like to understand the difference between a malach, between an angel and man, the first difference is a malach has none of these hergeshim. Brilliant intellect, never swayed, never confused, never dizzy, sort of getting it and not getting it. A malach sees with piercing clarity, understands with brilliance. But there's a second difference. The second difference between a malach and us, the Ramchal explains to us, is that the malach does not have chushim, does not have senses. I relate to the physical world with my senses. I touch, I taste, I hear, I smell, I see. My entire relationship to the physical world comes to me through these sensory inputs. We view them as wonders. And on a physical level, they are. It's wonders. I could put my hand into my pocket and I could feel the difference between rough and smooth, hot and cold, dry and wet. I can hear from a distance. I don't even see it, but a block away I could hear the click, click, click of someone walking. And the eyesight is astonishing. I could see 2 blocks away, 4 blocks away. I could see things that I can never touch. And we're wowed by our senses. And again, as physical apparatuses, they're very impressive. But the Ramchal explains to us that they're actually extraordinarily limiting. And I'll give you a mashal to what it means. Imagine you decide that you would like to go deep sea diving. But I mean really deep sea diving. So you get into one of those compression diving bells, and they close the hatch, and they start letting you down. There's a little window, and as you start letting you down, you're going down and down. The first 500 feet, you're still able to see the fish and whatever's going on in the ocean. But as you go lower, it gets darker and darker. As you go a few thousand feet down, the sunlight barely penetrates. It gets darker and darker, more murky and more murky. And finally, as you get to 20,000 feet, it looks like blackness outside. There's almost no sunlight. But every once in a while, you see some strange aquatic creature that kind of goes by your little glass. You can't see very well out of it because it's very murky out there, but you can sort of pierce and you say, wow, look at this wondrous thing. I could look at it as glass and see into the world out there. It's astonishing what this glass brings me. And then they bring you up 15,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 5,000 feet, bring it to the surface, open the hatch, and you open your eyes and brilliant light hits you. That which we see with our physical eyes is so limited. HaShem put me into this body and I'm submerged in layers and layers of physicality, blinded. The only little bit that comes through is sort of hazy and fuzzy and I can barely see it. A malach sees from one end of the earth to the other. A malach recognizes what happens in Chicago and Los Angeles and every part of the world because it has real vision, not physical limited vision that you see through its murkiness. It has perception and understanding. Now, if you'd like to understand what I'm referring to, let's bring our buddy Shmuel back. Because I think only with Shmuel's eyes can we understand the real difference between a malach and an adam. Shmuel's a guy who lived about 200 years ago, and I decide that I'm going to show Shmuel the wonders of our modern world. Shmuel, come here, guy. Come here. Get in. I open the car. Sit down. What's the way you time me? Relax. Click it or ticket. Just relax, Shmuel. Sit down. I get behind the wheel of the car, put on the engine, push the gas. These the horses. Relax. I got lots of horses. 200 horsepower. 200 horse? No, 200 horsepower. My engine has over 200 horsepower. And we start driving. Now remember, in Shmuel's entire life, he never went more than 18, maybe 20 miles an hour. Even on the back of a horse, 25 miles an hour. I get onto a highway and I start accelerating. 10 miles an hour, 15, 20. The trees are going so fast. 30, 40, I can't breathe. 50, 60 miles an hour. Stop, where we go? Shmuel, relax. We're just going for a highway drive. At 70 miles an hour, Shmuel is beads of sweat. He's never experienced the world this fast. Take it easy, Shmuel. We got some Valium in our world also. We'll give you some of those soon. And I drive Shmuel to an airport. Shmuel, come, get out. You're going to give Vasa to the horses now? Maybe they're thirsty from all the going on the highway. Shmuel, take it easy. I bring Shmuel to a Piper Cub. I put him into the seat. I again click it. You time me in again. Relax, Shmuel. I get in on the other side. And again, I turn on the engine. What's this? It's a plane, Shmuel. Kind of like an engine that we saw before. And I start taxiing to the runway. Now Shmuel's learned the game already. He's not scared. 10 miles an hour. I know. The horses will be okay. Give him water, okay. 20 miles an hour. He's not scared. 30 miles. Yeah, it's okay. 40, 50. I'm not scared. No, 50, 60, 70. By 90, we start hovering a little bit. 99, we're taking off. The ground's getting further. What's it? The ground. We'll fly. It's on my face. I'm not a bird. Get me down. Help! And I take Shmuel for a little flight. We go flying in the air. But Shmuel, take it easy. This is not the wonder of technology yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. We're heading somewhere. And I take Shmuel straight to an industrial park. I land. Shmuel gets out. Doesn't need his Ambien, his Valium. I take him out and say, Shmuel, what do you see? Oh, I see buildings. Shmuel, you ever see buildings this big? No. Shmuel, come here. This is an industrial park. This is factories, machinery that produce things. Come with me. And I take him into a factory. Shmuel, count the suits that are waiting to be boxed up. Shmuel starts counting, about 1,000. Shmuel, in your world, how long would it take a man to make 1,000 suits? He has to weave the fabric, he has to sew, about maybe a suit a month, maybe 10 suits a year. It would take him about 100 years. Shmuel, what if I told you that one man flicks a switch and in 1 hour, 1,000 suits are produced? I'll take you to another building where a man flicks a switch and thousands of shoes come off a machine, fully sewed, fully ready. I show Shmuel production that's so beyond his frame of reference that he has no way to even make sense of it. Would you like to know Pshat in this Chazal? What Hashem was saying to Adam Arishan is there's a physical world and there's a spiritual world. In the physical world, you're but a very weak little human being. But there's a spiritual world. And that spiritual world, which is the counter force to everything physical, you are a powerhouse. I'm making the world dependent upon you. I am the Borei Olam. You are created B'Tselem Elokim. What does it mean man was made in God's image? I mean man has a face, and Hashem has a face. Hashem is Ein Lo Guf. There's no physicality, no bonds, no limits, no boundaries. And Nefesh HaChaim explains to us that Hashem is the Borei. Hashem created and maintains everything in existence. And when Hashem put man into the world, He said, you will be a little Borei. Spiritual worlds are dependent on what you do. Do the mitzvahs, learn, do what you're supposed to. The world will have a tremendous infusion of energy. It will continue to exist because the spiritual worlds are dependent on you. The physical world only exists as long as the spiritual undercurrents are strong. Keep the spiritual world and the physical world will exist. But if you stop doing what you're supposed to, the spiritual world will go into decay and the physical world will collapse. If you'd like to understand our power, you have to move way, way out of our frame of reference. Shmuel from 200 years ago could not imagine machines that produce that much. He couldn't imagine a little engine being the power of 200 horses. He couldn't envision machinery that produced that way. We are very sophisticated in understanding physical science, and we are so ignorant in understanding the spiritual worlds. Adam HaRishon was given the keys to creation. The entire spiritual world was dependent on his actions. If he does what he's supposed to, it will flourish. The physical world, which is kept in existence by it, will continue. And if not, it will be destroyed. When Adam HaRishon sinned, he destroyed the upper world, hence destroying the physical worlds. And if we human beings ever had a clue to the impact of our actions, we would be heady. We'd be giddy. When I sit down to learn a blot Gemara, when I pick up a lulav and esrog, when I put on tefillin, in a physical world I did very little. But those who are attuned to the spiritual world will see powerful, powerful forces that are now brought into existence. Power that was energized into the upper worlds. We're very, very attuned to physicality. We're clueless to the spiritual world. The ancient Mitzrim were far wiser than us, and they understood that everything physical has a spiritual counterpart. They knew how to move around things in an illicit way, called kishuf. What Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to the Klal Yisrael is, you were brought up in Mitzrayim. You are very sophisticated in worlds of spirituality, and you understand that the sun obeys Hashem's commandments. Why? Because it recognizes that that which Hashem tells it to do is good. You recognize the sun is a das nifrad, a separate, independent will. The sun could obey or not, but it obeys because it recognizes the goodness of Hashem. As sophisticated as we are so clueless to the spiritual world. Hence we look at things and big deal. Let's say my tefillins, letters were touching. So what? Really, the whole thing's puzzle? I mean, come on, show me an example in a physical world of anything like that. Next time you're changing electrical wire and you notice there's no rubber on it, before you touch it, slow down. It's a little rubber, come on, it makes such a difference. Yeah, rubber, no rubber. I touch the wire, I touch the rubber. Either way, I'm touching it, right? Yeah, I don't think so. If we were attuned to spirituality, what happens in the spiritual world, we'd be giddy with our power. Hashem created us and gave us such impact, such effect. Nefesh HaChaim spends parak after parak describing what happens when we do any single mitzvah, and the opposite, when we do an aveira. It's not just I did. It's not just whatever. It creates a powerful spiritual change. When we blow the shofar in Rosh Hashanah, you notice one of the yirotzons that we say. Look in the Machzor, we say, Yiratzon Hashem, it should be your will that the malachim that come out of the shofar should be Ola Lefanecha Latov. They should rise in front of you for good. Do you ever watch a man blow the shofar and you see a malach created? We don't see. Because we're like our buddy Shmuel. We don't see sound waves. We don't see electricity. We don't see x-rays. In Shmuel's primitive sense, because he doesn't see it, they don't exist. But we're way more sophisticated. We harness forces on a regular basis, and we're fully attuned to them, yet we don't sense them. I don't hear them, I don't see them, but gee golly, I know they're there. And if a Jew could understand what happens with any mitzvah that creates a malach, any action creates a powerful, powerful malach, the more pure the kavanah, the more powerful the malach, the less the kavanah, the less pure. Every avera does the opposite. I think this Chazal shares with us a very, very key perspective. You know why it's hard for us to do tshuvah? Whatever, come on. I did some sins, so what? Come on. Spoke Lashon Hara, maybe I did, all right, whatever, come on. Everybody sins, not a big deal. Don't get all bent out of shape. Don't go start banging your chest and crying. It's not like I changed anything real. If we had a clue to the change in our neshama, believe me, we'd understand it. But much more than our neshama. If we understood the change in the upper world, we understood the gravity of every single action. Every Ma'aseh Tov creates powerful, powerful malachim. Every Avera creates powerful, powerful devastations. Let me just close with one last thought that I believe, hopefully will make this a little bit more clear. What happens when I die? What happens when it's over? You ever wonder, what's it like? No, the body's put in the ground, I separate, and I don't know, I'm supposed to stand in front of Beis Din Shamal or something, I'm not sure, right? I'd like to share with you a little seer that I thought of. My body's put in the ground, they cover it with dirt, I leave. That moment that I always ran away from, that moment that I denied happens, and I leave my physical being, but it's me with all of my senses and all of my feelings. I leave this physical world and I stand right before entering the Beis Din Shamala. And a powerful, brilliant, shining malach walks up to me and says, Shalom Aleichem Tati. Tati. I have 6 kids. 4 girls, 2 boys. You don't look like any of them. Tati, you don't remember me? Remember, who are you? Don't you remember? And that poor widow. She was so needy and you helped her with such chesed. You created me. Tati, thank you for creating me. And he steps aside and walks in another powerful, brilliant malach shining. And he says, Shalom Aleichem Tati. Tati, who are you? You don't remember me? You created me 14 years ago. Don't you remember? The guy needed help and you stopped learning. You stopped what you were doing because it was the right thing to do and you helped. You made me then. Malach after malach, powerful, brilliant, gigantic, beyond any human understanding, presents themselves, bows and says, Shalom Aleichem Tati, thank you for making me. Shalom Aleichem Tati, thank you for creating me. One after another, after another, after another. And then I notice one that's a little bit kind of gray in the middle. What's you? What's your story? Oh, Tati, you don't remember me? No. Well, you remember the time when you were learning, but you kind of were a little bit nasty? Well, I'm the one you created. And next walks in one that's kind of also like damaged and dirty. And who are you? Well, do you remember the time you were jealous and you really said the things you shouldn't have done? And in walks one that's black. And who are you? Well, I'm sorry everyone to tell you. Remember the 10 years ago? 10 years ago? Who remembers that? And in walks another one, black as coal. Who are you? 15 years ago. You don't remember? You don't remember you made me when you went to... You don't remember? One after another, some crippled, some limping. And who are you? Why don't you have an arm? You don't remember me? The day you didn't put on tefillin? My friends, there's one sense that a human being feels at that moment. A tremendous urge. Give me one more chance. Let me come back to the physical world and change this. Give me one more chance to steig, to grow, to do another mitzvah. But more than anything, give me a chance to do tshuvah. There's a force in the world called tshuvah that eradicates actions. Mr. Sharma explains it doesn't make sense. It's not seicheldik, it's not strictly din, but it works. And at that moment, when I see the results of my actions so clearly, there's an overwhelming urge. Give me one more chance, one more moment. Let me undo what I did wrong. Let me change and do more good. But then it's too late. My friends, we have this unique opportunity called tshuvah, and we have days of the years that are set aside specifically for it. Days when a person can undo the damage that they've done, and days that a person can understand things they can't normally do, and the days that they can set goals, realistic, real goals to change, to grow, to make myself into a different human being. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu grant us a good Geben Shir, Gemar Tov, and Kol Mashal Simcha should be answered L'Tov.
Amen.